So what we try to do with Hack Healthcare is to build this connectivity, this connective tissue that would bring together disparate parts of the healthcare ecosystem to build these relationships that are so necessary to get things done in an ecosystem as complex as ours.
Welkom bij Health Nerd, een podcast op het kruispunt van zorg, technologie en ondernemerschap. Mijn naam is Tom Raakleers en dit is de Health Nerd podcast. Deze keer een andere aanpak, want mijn gast deze maand is Engelstalig. Leo Exter is de oprichter, bezieler, pleitbezorger en drijvende kracht achter Hack Belgium Labs. In het verleden organiseerde ze enkele malen Hack Belgium, een grote hackathon om de maatschappelijke uitdagingen van ons land te tackelen. Ik ben ook al jaren een groot voorstander van hackathons en dus gaat deze babbel, hoe kan het ook anders, over hackathons. En voor wie niet weet wat dat precies inhoudt, geen probleem, we leggen het haarfijn uit. En neen, het heeft niets te maken met slechte bijbedoelingen of inbreken in computers. We hebben het uitgebreid over wat een hackathon is, waarom het bijna magie is en of er zoiets bestaat als de hackers mindset. Eind oktober staat de volgende editie van Hack Healthcare gepland, waar gedurende 2 dagen gewerkt wordt aan concrete uitdagingen rond preventie, datadealing en nog zoveel meer. Zet dus alvast 23 en 24 oktober in de agenda. Geniet van deze aflevering van Health Nerd, die met Leo Exter.
So I'm the founder of Hack Belgium Labs. We're a very, very small, very boutique consultancy. We basically organize hackathons. We organize them for anybody who wants us to organize one for them, be that European Commission, European Parliament, the United Nations World Food Programme, Belgian Defense, a lot of pharma companies, quite a few industrial companies, a couple of banks. So we have a very long list of people who want us to organize hackathons for them. We also create our own events, and one of those is Hack Healthcare. So that's sort of our signature, how do I put this? The signature dish, if you wish. I was born and raised in the USSR, which is a very weird place to have been born and raised at. But I moved to Belgium back in 1999, and I've been here ever since. My professional background is in marketing, but I sort of rolled into entrepreneurship a little bit by accident in 2009. It seemed like the natural thing to do at the time, and once I discovered it, for me there was no going back for working for somebody else. It's a personal quirk. As to healthcare, that's an interesting question. It was also a little bit by accident. I've met Bart Collet, who invited me over to his care home back in the day, and we had a talk, and then we did the very first event around healthcare back then, basically because, well, we could, and it seemed like a fun thing to do. But then I was working with Bart. I also got introduced to Kunkas, and I got reintroduced to my old classmate from Vlerik, Frank Burmeister, and together we did quite a few interesting things in healthcare back in 2012 to 2014, to actually 2016, these 3 gentlemen are actually responsible for Hack Healthcare in a very important sense. They showed me what digital health could be and what digital health should be. So 10 years ago, they gave me they showed me the vision of what digital health could be doing for the patients, for the ecosystem, and digital health is still not there, right? Despite all the billions invested in it in Belgium and everywhere else, despite all this technology developed, it's still not doing what it could be. And this sort of created the immense frustration in me as a patient, as a human being, and as an entrepreneur. This is wrong. This is not good. What can I do to solve this? And to me, this is what drives me to keep on doing Hack Healthcare, is because I think what we do contributes in a small way to helping digital health realize its full potential for the benefit of patients, for the benefit of organizations. It's the technology is there, the budgets are certainly there. we're just not using it properly. And part of the reason is because we're not talking, we as a healthcare ecosystem are not talking to one another well enough and profoundly enough and often enough, right? There's very few events where people can actually, where a nurse can meet a pharma specialist. There's very few events where a technology guy who's working in a healthcare company can meet a hospital administrator, right? So what we try to do with Hack Healthcare is to build this connectivity, this connective tissue that would bring together disparate parts of the healthcare ecosystem to build these relationships that are so necessary to get things done in an ecosystem as complex as ours.
And what is Hack Healthcare exactly?
Hack Healthcare, simply put, is a 2-day event where the innovation doers from around the healthcare industry, healthcare ecosystem, come together to solve complicated problems. Again, together is a key word in there. And it's not just a 2-day event, there's a long preparatory process for that. But the essence of it is that over the course of 2 days, we bring people together to really focus and really go deep on very complicated problems, build groups of people that are keen to work on these problems, and then as groups, as teams, solve these problems, or at least find the blueprint for solving these problems just in 2 days.
Why exactly a hackathon? For those who have never participated in a hackathon, what is it exactly? What can people expect from a hackathon?
Uh, the I'll give it a fairly short answer. So a hackathon, for those who don't know, it's a portmanteau of two words, hacking and marathon. And it was invented back in the late 90s by, well, basically developers who decided that coming together to work on interesting, complicated problems is a fun and interesting thing to do. And then hackathons were adopted by the startup space in the early 90s, and then they sort of slowly permeated into the industry space, into corporate world in the early teens. And hackathons have sort of had this huge growth as a concept and adoption because they are a very interesting way of getting people to work together. Essentially, it's a 2 to 3 day process. You can do it in different ways. Of course, you can do it online. You can do it in one day. You can do it in any way you want. The core of it is you get people to think deep about a problem. You get people to work together on solving it. And there's usually a deadline. There's an endpoint at somewhere in the near future, and people have to work for the deadline. And somehow it I don't use the word magically lightly. There's good reasons for it, and we can talk about those a bit later. Somehow this process magically produces good results if you set it up correctly, if you have the right people there, if you work on the right problems, if you have the right process, if you created the right atmosphere, it magically produces good, strong results. And that's why these things are so popular. The on the plus side, it's not only about the results; it's also a hugely fun and educational experience because you're so focused and you're so concentrated on what you're doing. You learn by doing very, very quickly. So it's very intense, but it's also a very gratifying experience.
Use the word magic. Why is it so magical, you think?
It's magic because it produces results that you do not expect. It's um, people tend to work in a specific way, right? Whenever you come into an organization, there is a way of working there, and this is how you, whatever your background is, you come into an organization, you become acculturated to work in that way, right? And for all of us in the world, we all go to school, obviously exceptions, right? We all go to school that is done more or less the same way in pretty much every country. We go to work that is organized more or less the same way in pretty much every country. And then all of a sudden, for these 2 days, you're doing something completely different in a completely different way with completely new, random people. There is zero expectations. There is zero explanation on how to, well, there's very minimal, at least in our events, explanation on how to do things. So you are all of a sudden working without the usual constraints, without the usual limits. And all of a sudden, your inner child, your inner creator can come out and play. And that produces this wow feeling that people walk away with from a well-organized hackathon. And because there's a lot of people going through this wow moment and unleashing their own inner creative child, the results are usually far above and beyond what you would expect out of 2 days of work. The part of that is, as I mentioned, there's a deadline, right? So by the end of the 2 days of the event, you have to stop and you have to show something. right? And that also puts a lot of pressure on focusing on the right things. So you cut out, you lose, you forget about all the non-essentials. That's actually part of the reason why you get so far in just the 2 days. But this is also a liberating experience because so much of our work is there because, well, it's the way we've been doing it. It's somebody else asked me to do it, and because I forgot to do it last week. All of a sudden, for today is none of that, right? So that's why. So it's this combination of these few things that makes it a magical process, which tends to sometimes, on occasion, produce magical results. The more you program it, the more you plan it, the better and the more magical results can be. That's a whole separate story. That's why we have, we have a company that does it.
And what is for you a dream outcome of such a hackathon?
A dream outcome is many projects that survive, that thrive, that live after the event. Because for me, the experience is the experience, right? It's a great thing in and of itself. So that's to me sort of not even discussable. The experience has to be perfect, but that we've sort of figured out how to nail. Like the experience is a manageable process, right? Well, you know how to set things up. The difficult part remains bringing in the questions that can be answered meaningfully during a hackathon to produce a meaningful result afterwards, right? So for me, every time the sort of that lightning strikes, that's fantastic. That's my dream outcome.
And have you had experiences where real tangible problems were solved during a hackathon?
Well, we just talked about Lindicare. That's a project that came out of a hackathon, absolutely unexpected. It was a real world problem identified by a professor, a cardiologist, who proposed it to a team of developers, and among them happened to be one entrepreneur. And this team, over the course of just 2 days, or in one weekend, built an app, very very primitive version of it, of course, and tested it with potential customers, with other cardiologists who said, this is amazing, I want to use this, right? And to me, this remains pretty much the best example of how things can be done during a hackathon. And that's sort of that lightning in the bottle that we keep on chasing every time we do an event, especially with Hack Healthcare. It's finding that exactly right problem that needs a bit of creativity, a bit of a new perspective, a deeper conversation with the ecosystem, right? A better understanding of why it's a problem, what's causing it, and how it could be solved, right? Finding that right problem, finding the right people to work on it, that produces the magic, right? So that's my personal high, seeing that happen.
What kind of people participate in such a hackathon? Or if somebody's listening and saying, wow, Hack Healthcare, what should they expect or what should they bring to the table when they come to such a Hack Healthcare event?
Yep. An important distinction to bring up front about Hack Healthcare, a lot of hackathons are focusing on hardware or software design, so solving a concrete hard technical problem with concrete hard technical means, be that software or hardware. With Hack Healthcare, we work more with concepts. We work with things like business models. We work with things like service models. And for that, a participant does not at all have to be a technical person. That means that anybody in healthcare who wants to innovate, who wants to make a difference, is first of all eligible to take part. Second, is qualified to take part. So a nurse, a lawyer, a GP, a specialist, a pharma executive, a marketing person from any field of marketing, and God knows there's many, developers, data scientists, entrepreneurs, definitely entrepreneurs, hospital staff, innovation people of all kinds, everybody's welcome. And we've seen that the richness of the event is this huge diversity of participants. It's having this grounded in reality perspective of a nurse who has to deal with patients day in and day out, combined with a designer's vision of how things can be done better, combined with an entrepreneur's understanding of how to make things sustainable from the business perspective. That's the beauty of that, right? And that's sort of the uniqueness of what we're doing, is because there's very rarely an event that brings together such a diverse audience into one place and focuses on working on the same problems.
And do people need to have a solid healthcare background in order to participate?
Um, Solid is a loaded word, right? To me, anybody who has hands-on experience in healthcare, I think a year or two is enough. We've seen some very young people do extremely well in the teams. We've seen them take lead in their teams. We've seen them make wonderful presentations and, of course, contribute to the work of their teams. So you don't have to be, 35 years of experience to be good at healthcare and contribute to hack healthcare, to your team's work. You need just a year or two of experience, but you do need that experience because we've seen that it's nice to have a theoretical background, but it's the daily experience and understanding the organization in which you are acquiring that experience. That's what's really necessary.
So, what are the big themes of this year's edition of Hack Healthcare?
We see consistent interest in four big themes. One of them is screening and prevention. It's a very broad theme encompassing anything from screening for various cancers to vaccination to healthy lifestyle. So it's very broad and there's a lot of interest in it. Another one is enhancing patient experience. Again, this is well, the themes are by design very, very broad, but here is everything that goes towards enabling patients to do more, to be more in control of their own healthcare process, helping them acquire the knowledge they need and to take the control over their own patient journey. It can be it's anything from figuring out new ways of explaining to them what has just happened to them, right? Explaining better explaining the diagnosis, or showing the path to full health. Um, Third theme is secondary use of healthcare data and real world evidence. This is a far more of going on to the other side of the experience. It's of the um, healthcare ecosystem interests, right? This is very much driven by research and by pharma. This is their interests, right? This is figuring out how they can do their jobs more effectively and making sure they have all the knowledge they need to get things done. And finally, it's unlocking value of data flows. So this is talking primarily to the hospitals, and it's addressing one of the bigger fundamental problems, fundamental challenges that Belgian healthcare ecosystem faces, and that's the fact that the data does not flow between different parts of the ecosystem. And this can be, again, primarily hospitals and GPs, but also anybody else who needs to acquire data and share data, including the patients, right? And value in this case is not necessarily a monetary value. It's the human value of having access to your own data, being again in control of your own patient journey. That said, the themes are very, very broad, and basically they are interlocked as well, right? Obviously, there's a lot of overlap between them. That's partially by design, partially that's what the market demands, because the way we design these themes is by talking to the ecosystem, and the ecosystem keeps on saying we keep on having problems year in and year out in these four big areas. There's other problems that are not necessarily solvable in this kind of a context of the kind of a hackathon that we organize. But fundamentally, there is a good match between the existing persistent problems, a suite of available technologies, because none of the things we're talking about are technologically advanced. They don't require any new TRL2 research. You can solve all these problems with off-the-shelf stuff, off-the-shelf business models, off-the-shelf technologies, and basically just talking to one another, right? So that's why it's sort of these themes keep on emerging year in and year out for hack healthcare.
What can people expect in terms of process? So they show up on the morning of day one. What happens next?
Right. So the first thing that we do is we I don't like long speeches, right? I don't like making them. I absolutely hate hearing them, right? So we dive right into the action. We begin by 2 rounds of ideation. In each round of ideation, there is a challenge briefer, or actually multiple challenge briefers, who explain their perspective on the challenges. So challenges, for example, a pharma company wants to um, make it easier for, let's say, cancer patients to follow their journey. It's just an abstract example. And they would elaborate what exactly the problem is, why patients can't follow their journey easily today. So what's the problem today? What has been tried in terms of solution? Why hasn't that worked? And what could be the interesting opportunities to explore? And then after that, we basically organize all the participants in groups of 4, 5, 6 people and get them to brainstorm. Based on what they've just heard, based on their years of experience, they come up with ideas for solutions. and then we do it again. And I think that's a very useful moment, because we, first of all, we give people the opportunity to work on two different challenges, and we usually advise them to work on one challenge that they're very familiar with. So if you're a nurse working in a hospital, yes, go and work on a hospital-related challenge. But then for the second challenge, go take something that you know nothing about, so that you can come in with enough of the knowledge of the background, but with enough open-mindedness and naivete to ask questions that the people who know the subject, the experts, cannot ask themselves, because they're past that point of naivete and open-mindedness, right? So these two ideation rounds produce what I would refer to as unrefined jewels, right? The sort of brownish nuggets of lumps of something that has a promise. There's a bit of a sparkle somewhere in the deep part of it, but it's not anything yet. It's unrefined ideas. And then what we do over the course of the rest of the event, we refine those ideas, right? So we polish these brownish things of, something, right? So what happens after that? So we post all of the ideas on the walls, right? So all the ideas from all the workshops, and then participants of the event choose which ones they want to work on. And to me, this is a critical part, because if you work on a problem to which you can relate, where you have a personal stake, you'll be that much more involved in solving it, and you'll be that much more involved in working on it after the event as well. So I think this is a personal connection, personal relevance, in addition to the business relevance, which of course should be there, is a critical part of the event. And then teams basically go to work, and we try to essentially get out of their way, right? Because they need their time, and their best stimulus is each other. They will learn the most from the conversation among themselves, from throwing all kinds of ideas at the wall to see what sticks. They need time to work. That said, it's not a sort of randomness for the rest of the event. We foresee a couple of really critical moments. And one moment is patient interviews. So each team, it's not optional, must talk to a patient. We, of course, try to recruit patients that are relevant to the different problems that will come up in the event. So if there is a cancer-related challenge, we'll try to make sure there is a cancer patient in the room. If you're talking about a smoking challenge, we will have a smoker who's there to answer your questions. But we think it's absolutely critical to reset whichever discussion a team has been having vis-a-vis a patient. So on day one, towards the mid-afternoon, we ask the patients to talk about their experience, because that's the part that a lot of people in the healthcare ecosystem never get to encounter. Even people who are facing patients on a daily basis, they don't always have time to go deep and understand what's there. The human being who is having a health problem, not only the health problem that manifests in a human body, right? And this has been a transformative experience for a lot of teams. I have on video somewhere a startup saying, this is the first time we've talked to a patient in 2 years of running a startup. How is it possible? But that startup aside, it's always incredibly relevant to have this reset, to start with a human being that's in front of you, right? And that usually changes how people think about the problem they're trying to solve. It makes it a lot more personal, a lot more complicated sometimes, yeah, but that's the point. And then teams keep on working, and the process is actually very exhausting. So usually by 6 o'clock, we see people are exhausted. So we do a quick debrief, and then everybody goes home, and then everybody comes back the morning after for breakfast and restart of work. And usually what happens by that point is that teams have been sort of trying to not polish yet, just knock off the sharp edges, knock off the bits of that brown lump, and they don't necessarily have a idea at that moment yet. They've had that sparkle earlier on, but for now they don't have a fully formed idea yet. A conversation with the patient usually resets that and sort of throws a lot of their work out of the window. But that's part of the process. That's the goal. It's you hit the problem hard, and to make sure that all the fluff falls away, right? But in the morning they've had a chance to sleep on it, to think about it, to talk, and they get back to work, and they usually are full of ideas. Okay, we're going to do this and going to do that, and here's how we can solve it. In the morning, people tend to start really working on the idea, right? Which is when we ask them to, again, talk to the patient. At this moment, however, the patient's role is a bit different. The patient's there to say, in the solution that you're outlining, this would work, this would not. That I would never use, here's why. And this helps to, again, refine and reset the understanding of the solution that needs to be there. And then teams go back to work. And then we throw the third thing at them. That's the pitch coaching, right? So we bring in people who are good at storytelling and say, okay, tell them your story. And if the story doesn't hang together, you will hear it as a participant. You will know that the story I'm saying does not sound right because something is either broken underneath or I'm just not finding the right words. Usually both, right? So this is the last moment of refinement. And then there comes the culmination of the whole process, the pitches to the expert panels. And there we bring next level people. It's people from the government, it's people with lots of very senior experience, and it's more patience, right? And they're not to judge the best project. We don't care who wins. There is no winning, right? If not in the sense that everybody's a winner. No, there is no prize to win. Your reward is a good project that you take forward. It's the people who can give you the next level advice, offer next level critique, and say, you know what, you really should talk to X, Y, and Z. Here's his phone number. Give him a ring with my regards. This is what happens at the very close of the event. So people walk away saying, you know what, I've had that very senior person say that they see magic in my idea. They see magic in my project. I want to do this. Right. So this is the entire workflow of the event. And what it does is it takes this brown misshapen lump of something with a bit of spark inside and it polishes it. It cuts off the facets. It makes it into a jewel. Right. So what comes out is a fairly clear idea of what the project needs to be, how it can be done, with whom it needs to be, who needs to be involved in making it happen, what the financing could be, how far you can go. All of that. It's you go from a very raw spark of an idea in the very beginning to a very clear and condensed understanding of the project. You're not done with it, right? You're not started working on it really, but you have come to a very hard and concrete, useful bit of imagination encapsulated in this process and next steps really.
And what are those next steps? What happens after these 2 days?
It varies. It really depends on the people who are there, right? So we've seen some really interesting startups come out of the event. So the first one going back to 10 years ago, that's Lindicare. But also a lot more recently, My Nursing Angel coalesced at one of our events. Mitchell Silva's clinical trial portal came out of the 2021 edition of Hack Healthcare. So we see but we see some startups emerging. But more importantly, I think to me, we also see a lot of organizational and institutional projects. So we see a couple of projects happening. One is at Helan internally. There is a project linked to menopause. There's a couple of projects at Roche. And there's a very interesting first time ever that I'm aware of collaboration between Roche and Novartis on a shared project that is for the benefit of advanced breast cancer patients, right? So what comes out is really up to the participants and really up to the organizations that bring us their challenges. It's up to them to say, we're prepared to follow up, we're prepared to invest this much of human time and resources into making this happen. Or there's an entrepreneur who says, you know what, I think this is worth my time, I really want to do this.
Can you define what a hacker's mindset is? Does that exist?
I think it exists, but it's not a hacker's. Well, it is sort of a combination of willingness to explore, because a lot of every time in most organizations, no matter what they say, initiative is punishable, right? So for once, you can get as creative as you can in the work-related context. So I think this sort of ignoring the constraints that are there, or being able to temporarily ignore constraints that are there and getting creative, I think that's a big part of it. Another big part of it is to look through whatever it is you're doing to determine what's essential and what's not. That is absolutely critical. If you want to have, for me, a good hack is not just clever, it's also elegant in a sense, because it's shed all the useless fluff that accumulates around whatever it is that we do. So I think this sort of ability to focus and to say, you know what, this is critical, this is not, and I'm going to ignore it because it's not helping me right now, right? And being able to focus, I think that's the second part of the hacker's mindset. That's two things, and I think the third one is openness to other people's input. because every one of us has a professional tunnel vision. And it's so very easy to say, I've been doing it this way for this many years. I mean, I've been in the workforce for, God knows, 26 years, 27, right? I have a lot of habits, right? I have a lot of preconceived notions that are in my head. And for me, the hacker's mindset is being able to say, that's my knowledge up to today. What I'm talking to, people I'm talking to today have as much knowledge, and I should be very open to what they're saying. I should really take their advice to heart, and because it may be counterintuitive for me, it may sound wrong to me, but they're saying this based on a hell of a lot of experience. And so listening to that advice coming from other people who have different experience than yours and taking it on board and doing something with it, that's the last part of the hacker mindset, I would say.
Very concretely, when people are interested to join, where can they go? What are the dates? What's the location? What's the practical side of things?
So first, the dates. The dates for the event are October 23 and 24 this year. It's a Wednesday and a Thursday, strategically chosen. The event so far has always taken place and will do so again this year at Area 42. It's a very nice event venue in Brussels. It's close to the North Station. It's quite easy to get to by public transport, but I would really advise against driving there. How do you get to take part in the event? Well, there is multiple options. First option, you can join as a challenge owner. So your organization can still, for another few days, say, you know what, we have an interesting challenge we want solved at Hack Healthcare. So if that's the case, they just need to drop me a mail and I'll be happy to talk to them. You can also take part as a regular participant. There is tickets available on our website very, very shortly. And you just buy a ticket and you take part. Do note that diagnosed patients, patient organizations, and practicing healthcare practitioners join for free. Everybody else needs to pay. It's a commercial initiative, and it's our partners like Roche, Novartis, MSD joining us for the first time this year, GSK, and many others who've supported the event in the past. And but it's also been all the rest of the participants, so everybody needs to contribute something. And that's pretty much it.
Just one final question. Is there something you still dream about that you would like to realize from a hackathon point of view, or for healthcare specifically? What's still your big ambition to realize in life?
Well, personally, I think a hackathon is an amazing thing to experience for anybody because it takes you so much. It shows you how you could be working in a very different way, how ambitious you could be, how creative you could be. So it is my personal ambition. I wouldn't say it's my personal ambition, but it's. I would love for everybody to experience a hackathon as a participant at least once in their life. I know I know quite a few people who've come back time and time again because it's such a wonderful, interesting experience. So I'd love for everybody to have that at least once. And for Hack Healthcare specifically, I'd love for this to be a European event, not a Belgian event. I think there's a lot of challenges that are expressed very differently in different countries, but fundamentally the underlying problems are all the same. We did a hackathon for a pharma company a few years ago where we did the same thing in 5 countries, all at the same time. And by talking to people in all 5 countries, by looking at the research, I saw that problems are identical. The details are different, but the fundamentals are the same. So these fundamental problems can only be solved if enough people are fundamentally working together to solve them, right? And for me, that's the ambition for Hack Healthcare going forward, is to take it to the European level, have more people take part in it, and spread the gospel, spread the good word about the hacker mindset, and to apply it to their respective healthcare ecosystems everywhere in Europe, and why not the world.
En hiermee sluiten we deze aflevering van Held Nerd af. Wil je deze of andere afleveringen herbeluisteren? Ga naar je favoriete podcastapplicatie of bezoek heldnerd.eu. Heel graag tot de volgende.